Alright, welcome to the UFC 318 breakdown, everyone. Let me know if you can hear me, please. Hey, Ham. Yes, okay, good. So, I think the delay last time, which was getting a bit ridiculous on when you guys saw things versus when I said it, was probably due to the FPS settings I had from recording. So I'm hoping that's a bit better today. We will see what happens, though. So we'll do the usual 10-ish minutes of random questions, then get into the full card breakdown. In terms of the questions, also keep it generally not about the UFC 318 fights because I'll get to that. Prime Conor or Ilia? It's a tough question, to be honest, because Ilia has improved a lot over his last three fights, in my opinion. While I definitely would have had Conor in the past without question, if Ilia game plans correctly, he definitely could win it. I do think Ilia would have to wrestle early, and not that I think that he would be able to just ragdoll Conor. Conor did have underrated takedown defense, but Ilia did keep his power longer into a fight than Conor did. So there are paths to victory for each. The other thing is that Conor definitely also did take a shot to give a shot through a lot of his career. He did switch strategies in certain fights, so not that he always had to tank damage, but it happened at times. So I guess now I would start slightly leaning Ilia, but Prime Conor definitely had a solid chance. Does chatting increase XP? I guess so. I have no idea how it works in all honesty. I think more people should train boxing separately instead of doing MMA boxing. Okay, while I understand that take, I don't fully agree. Because traditional boxing with the boxing gloves is kind of useless in MMA, in my opinion. You can't guard the same. The way you target is completely different. It's just like, should you maybe train like boxing specifically in MMA gloves instead of doing MMA boxing? Maybe. But you shouldn't use boxing gloves, in my opinion, personally. There's this MMA betting subreddit, and there's so many posts saying Oliveira's a trap line against Kyler. I think Oliveira gets him out in the first round. I will get to that fight. I have some interesting opinions. Do you remember who you had picked between Khabib and Conor? I didn't really analyze or predict fights at that time, so neither. John Silva versus top 5 lightweights. Who's top 5 a lightweight right now again? Let's see. Are you guys having this issue also? Every time I look up UFC rankings now, it just doesn't come up. I have to go through the UFC website and then specifically click on it, which is fine. It's just weird that it disappeared. So top 5 lightweights right now being Poirier, Islam, Arman, Charles, and Gaethje. Okay, so Silva would kill Gaethje, realistically beats Oliveira. Arman could be an interesting one because we haven't seen him tested by someone's wrestling who's that strong. I still think that he would beat Arman because Arman is too predictable, though, and you don't want to be predictable against Silva. Islam and Poirier would be the fun ones. I do lean him against either of them, but just barely, and I actually think Islam is a slightly harder matchup just because the stylistic difference. Because Poirier gives people the opportunities to hit him. He does tank shots as part of his strategy overall. Kind of similar to Conor in a way. He got a lot from Conor's style, even if it doesn't end up looking like Conor. But Islam, on the other hand, has a very elusive style where he's trying to not get hit at all. It makes him less dangerous on the feet for sure, but it could be more of a problem for Silva because there aren't as many opportunities to punish. Silva also doesn't really have a blitzing strategy, which is how you can punish Islam's defensive issues. So it would be a bit of a challenging matchup for him. Any underdogs who can get it done. I will get to that, don't worry. Ilia would flatline Silva. It's possible, of course. It's not a very, very confident pick on Silva by any means, but I do think that Ilia's tendency to be extremely predictable in the strikes he throws and leave openings that he does know exist in all fairness, but he's willing to leave existing, would be a problem against Silva. What do you think Rufi's potential is in the lightweight division? We'll really have to see based on his next few fights. I think he has the potential to be champion, but I don't know if he'll ever actually fulfill that. Silva gets backed up to the cage too much and takes a while to start. Silva gets backed up to the cage when he knows he can back up to the cage. It's not like he gets backed up to the cage just as a general thing. When he let Dober back him up to the cage, it was because he wanted to pull Dober into the spinning elbow. It wasn't just because he couldn't advance. I feel like Valentin will wrestle Gautier. It's possible. We'll get to it. Also, regarding Silva taking a while to start, he does like to see reads a few times, but it's also not that he needs to. There are fights where he does start much faster when he feels like he needs to. Mario Batista versus Tom Aspinall. Because Bautista's willing to play it smart and kind of just try to drain Aspinall, I'm actually going to lean Bautista, because he's just going to try to close the distance and use the fact that there are two of them to hold him down. Do you still think that BSD can be champ? So, it's tough to say, because he has all the attributes to be capable of it, but so do a fair number of people in the UFC, to be fair. I think his style is also hard to deal with. That being said, he needs a lot of changes, of course. Granted, now that he's working with Imovov's coach, it's possible, because that is a coach who could bring that out of him. So I will say it's not nearly as likely as I may have thought it was in the past, but it is very possible. How do you become better at analyzing fighters and matchups? I would say make a prediction of how a fight will go, and don't just predict like, oh, who's going to win. Like, predict how they're going to win, why they're going to win, what combos they might throw, what things you might see in the fight, and do so by looking at their previous tendencies of them and their opponents. And then after you make that prediction, see how it ages, look at what you missed, what you got right, and then go from there. Basically just slowly improve how you see things. Do you think the Philly shell works in MMA? I always feel like Dustin Poirier's goofy crab guard Philly shell gets him in trouble because there's less coverage. Philly shell can work in MMA. It's just, you have to be very careful about how you implement it. I mean, it's the same thing about most skills transitioning to MMA. You have to modify it a little bit, but it can work. What's your parlay? I do not have a singular big parlay for this event by any means. And what are your thoughts on the Payton Talbot fight? Do you think Talbot leveled up his fight, or Lima was just slow? Kind of both. It was a weird fight because I came out of the fight with a lower opinion of both of them. Well, I shouldn't say that I came away with a lower opinion of Talbot. I would say my opinion of Talbot slightly did increase, just not that much. Because Talbot, of course, put in the effort to fix his takedown defense overall. Good on him. His striking defense still just didn't exist. Like, he just got hit by anything Lima threw. Lima just, for some reason, was desperate to get a takedown and could have easily just outpointed Talbot if he kept it standing. So it's a weird thing where the issues that I originally had with Talbot before he was exposed by Barcelos, I still completely have with Talbot. But the Lima also showed that he's maybe not who I thought he was. I think Ilia would destroy any version of Poirier, but a lot of people disagree. Yeah. So Poirier is just not... Even though him being a southpaw would help him against Ilia, it would not be enough. It's too easy to manipulate Poirier's position. You can get him to back up to the fence very easily. Whitaker versus Strickland. So I think that Strickland is just more fundamentally sound. Whitaker's blitz, once people started figuring it out, became a lot less effective. Like, that's the reason why Whitaker went from finishing everyone to going into a decision pretty much every fight. Now, when there's such a gap like Whitaker versus Liskrov, okay, he'll still find something. But against Strickland, who is fundamentally sound and will be able to just pick at him and not get hit by the blitz, I have to lean Strickland. No problem, Bob. Can Oralby become champion? It's definitely too early to say, but he has the possibility. He felt Talbot's power. Yeah, to an extent it seemed like that, but if you cannot will your way through it, you're not going to go very far in the UFC because there are a lot of heavy hitters. Holland's going to decision against Derrod is plus money. I mean, Derrod got finished by... what's his name? God, I'm blanking on. Why am I forgetting random people's names? Sorry. Ian Giri. So... I think Derrod has fought a lot of lower level or much older competition, so we'll get to that though. Imavov versus Kyo, who you got? I keep changing my mind on it. I'm still leaning Imavov, but it's hard to bet against the fighting nerds with how good they've been about game planning. How would Ilia versus Oralby go? I'd like to see Ilia's wrestling tested a bit more before that, but I do think Ilia would probably clip Oralby because Oralby is hittable. Do you think Peyton Talbot, especially given his recent performance, is overrated? I believe his pressure and shots are horrendous. So Talbot was dramatically overrated before his Barcelos fight. Now I think he's kind of appropriately rated. Also, you have some of the best depth and analysis for MMA. Thanks. Okay, so I am noticing something, which is the stream does lag a bit every once in a while. I think it's so quick that it's kind of unnoticeable for you guys, but I think it's increasing the effective delay. I'll probably have to figure that out some other time. I don't know how to fix that right now, unfortunately, but it's okay. What was Dustin Poirier's biggest weakness in his career? Such a slick striker, but got overwhelmed at times. It seems like against Max 2, got caught against like Justin, and never seemed competitive in his 3 title fights. So I think that Poirier's biggest weakness in many ways is that he seemingly just could not stick to game plans. Against, like, for example, against Khabib, and even against Islam, he knew what he was supposed to do, but he deviated at random times, which got him into trouble. It's a very underrated criticism of him, I would say, is that he just makes mistakes for no reason, and his coaches are like, what are you doing? You notice the lag? Okay, yeah, so it definitely exists, unfortunately. Settings. Stream settings. Oh, it's not going to let me change the, Okay, we'll get through this stream. Hopefully it's alright. It's not going to let me change the settings while the stream is live. Dustin is too stationary and he likes to brawl for no reason. I don't think brawling is his biggest issue by any means. I think it's just not really fighting in the most efficient way possible. Gotcha, that actually makes a lot of sense. As a Dustin Poirier fan, I'd always get frustrated, but it seems like we completely lose control of the moment in the fight, seemingly randomly. Yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean. Alright, we're at 15 minutes. I will switch to the beginnings of the breakdown. I'm gonna probably blitz through the first 3 fights. If there's something you guys specifically want me to cover, let me know and I'll slow down a bit on it. I think we're at 3 to 4 seconds of lag, which is not the worst it's been. Remember when I told you I was looking forward to the stream? I'm here now. Glad to see you here. Alright, so starting with Judice versus Kyari. Judice is a very high volume striker. She got the knockout in her last fight. That was more probably of a, okay, Dubin just was not ready for UFC level competition. Judice more is looking for volume and picks it up in the second and third round. She tends to struggle in the first because she just doesn't have the most power in her punches. Her style is a bit less effective in my opinion because she does headhunt. If she went to the body a lot more frequently with her cardio, she would probably end up finishing a lot of the girls in the 3rd round. Kyari is more of a grappler. She will throw heavy to try to initiate the grappling, but if she's not getting a takedown, she's probably not winning the fight. Because of that, I'm going to lean Judice. I think she has the higher cap of the two of them here. She can recover even if she gets taken down. Her volume is probably going to be too much for Kyari. So ultimately, that's what it is. She's minus 300 for a reason. Bruno versus Jackson McVey. So Bruno is a power puncher and was underrated for a long time. I feel like he is still an extent underrated because his he's very well rounded. Even though like he can look very strange at times, in every position he has something. His biggest problem is probably his cardio, as we saw in the Abus fight. He somehow gassed before Abus. He did hurt Abus multiple times and kind of threw the fight by going to spinning elbows for absolutely no reason. But he has shown he can put pretty much anyone out and is always dangerous from anywhere. McVey is very rangy. He's going to try to keep you at a distance, a lot of jabs and teeps. Then he tries to basically use his length to lock up stuff like Darces and other submissions. He is more of a submission specialist than a striker, although he can strike and has reasonable power. I think the reason why this is a very Bruno-favored matchup is McVey is going to put pressure on. And ultimately, you don't want to pressure into Bruno, because he just needs one shot to put you out. And especially with someone with the inexperience of McVey, the chances of him getting cracked once are pretty high. So, probably going to be an early TKO by Bruno. Oh yeah, so formal pick for Judice would be Judice decision. Formal pick for Bruno would be Bruno first round TKO. McVey is definitely not 6'4". I didn't see the face off, so fair enough, I'll trust you on that. Okay, so my first semi-controversial take is on this fight. Ryan Spann versus Brekkis. So, Spann, everyone loves to hate on because he is so wildly inconsistent. I do not blame anyone for not wanting to acknowledge this fight's existence, to say the least. Spann has a reasonable jab when he decides to use it. He has solid takedowns, but he loves to be stupid on the ground and just either get reversed or let people up and not go for ground and pound when he has perfect position and chases up he won't get instead. So, even though Spann is very talented everywhere, he's the type of fighter who just does everything wrong to the point he will still manage to lose. And it's very disappointing because especially at heavyweight, Spann could be something. Brekkis is, I guess, semi-well-rounded, you could say, but to be honest, in a negative way, he's just not good at anything. Brekkis on the regional scene was definitely juicing because he was just extremely fast and powerful then. Then he got to the UFC and all of a sudden he looks like he's punching in slow motion. I mean, his takedown defense is okay, I guess. His fundamentals aren't terrible, but he makes Schnell's chin look like Vtori's. If Brekkis gets like touched once, he just dies. It's ridiculous to watch. So, even though Spann is wildly inconsistent and does everything wrong possible, I have a very hard time seeing him lose to Brekkis. Because all he has to do is touch Brekkis once, and this fight is probably over. I mean, we don't know if Spann's going to get the knockout or just drop him and then get a guillotine or whatever. Spann definitely mixes up in that sense. But I am surprised that Spann isn't like minus 400, minus 500 here, in all honesty. Like, Spann, I find it, like, how does he lose this? I don't even know. All he has to do is land one shot. He has 3 rounds to do so. And even if he can't even land the one shot, he might be able to take down Brekkis and choke him out as well. Like, he has the advantage everywhere. So I'm going to take Spann by TKO. It could easily be a sub also, though. I'm going to say round 1 TKO. Spann remembers how to fight whenever I pick against him and forgets whenever I pick him. Yeah, I get that feeling. Which one do you like more? High volume striking or heavy power? I guess it depends on the matchup, right? If you're talking about like what would I prefer in myself, I guess I would prefer heavy power because I think that lets you be more creative with setups. While with volume, you have to land a bunch, so it's not as much about setups. All right, moving on to Crute versus Prachnio. A lot of people are on Prachnio this week, and this definitely surprised me because even though I like Prachnio as a striker, he has the karate style, and he just never adapted his takedown defense to MMA. So, yes, he's a very dynamic striker. He has knockout power. He beat up Roundtree on the feet. He probably would still beat Roundtree again, in all honesty, although he's getting a bit old, so maybe not, but it would still be close, to say the least. But Prachnio cannot stuff a takedown for his life. On the other side, Jimmy Crute's stand-up is not the most fundamental. He has a lot of power, and he can definitely hurt people, but it's not really fluid. That's the biggest problem with this stand-up, is that everything looks a bit forced. He can get chopped by calf kicks, as we saw in the Anthony Smith fight, and again, if you just have slightly more fundamental striking, he can definitely get hurt. The good thing for him is he is quite durable if you don't have, like, Jamal Hill power. So even when Crute was getting tagged repetitively by, I'm just going to keep blanking on names, let me check. Menafield, there we go. When he was getting hit repetitively by Menafield, he was still able to tough his way through it and get to the decision the first time. Of course, the second time he ended up shooting like a panic shot and getting subbed, but his brain did not seem there at that point, in all honesty. So, Crute, all he has to do is not ego this and just wrestle, and he will probably get a first round sub. If not a first round sub, he can just repeat it over and over until he gets a sub in round 2 or 3 and Prachnio is tired, because Prachnio is at the age where he is gassing out relatively easily. So, I heavily favor Crute sub here. I think it will happen in round 1. It could happen a bit later as well. People forget, man, Prachnio threw that head kick in clinch distance. Yeah, that question mark kick was crazy. Fugitt versus Doltov, I am looking forwards to, because Dulatov's style is really fun. When I was watching tape on him, I was like, okay, this is the debut I'm probably most excited about for any in probably this year. Other than maybe Vallejos, if that was this year. But Doltov can be a bit predictable. That's his biggest problem. He will spam hooks in the pocket. He will engage with like the long 1-2 or 2-3, as I said in my Instagram video about it. But he is so fast, so powerful, and has such good accuracy, it does not really matter. He also has a reasonable ground game. He had subs earlier into his career. I don't think his submission game is that good. I think that is more a consequence of the opponents just being lower level. But he can hold his own on the ground. If he gets taken down once, it's not like he's just about to get subbed or ground and pounded out. So, on the other hand, Fugitt is kind of technical. He will pump out the jab. His takedowns are all right. He does a lot of things like technically correct. The biggest problem is that he's just not. Unfortunately, he just doesn't have the physical attributes to really succeed in the sport. There's nothing he's like super good at, and there's nowhere where he's really dangerous. He kind of has to win by decision. He has, the ability to theoretically get a submission, but it's really not much. So the only way he could potentially survive this fight is if he just got beaten up for like a round and a half, Doltov completely gassed himself out, and then Fugitt was able to just pick him apart. But the chances of that happening are pretty much nothing. Like, Doltov should run through Fugitt in round 1. Probably hooks against the fence, maybe a flying knee. Doltov does like to go for the flying knee a lot once he gets so in pins and is kind of in the clinch. The biggest problem with Doltov, as I did mention before on the Instagram video, is that he'll hurt someone badly and then be like, oh, let me take their back now. I don't know why. It probably worked early into his career and he built bad habits based on the fact that low-level opponents are easy to sub. Hopefully for his sake, he starts fixing that, although it probably won't matter against Fugitt. There are people, of course, where if you give them the opportunity to recover and you are getting more tired, it will not go well for you. So, should be an easy debut for Doltov, but he has issues to fix. Interested to see if he can keep developing his skills. Yeah, exactly. Isn't this the third time Doltov was pitted against Fugitt? Honestly, I haven't really checked. When do we see you in the UFC? Probably never now, but people that I help get into the UFC, maybe. It was cancelled once. What about the garbage cans this guy fought 2 fights ago who was 0-6? Yeah, Dulatov's competition has not been the highest level, but by watching the tape on Doltov, you can see that he has actual ability. Like, it's one of those cases where it's like, it's not about his opponents, it's about how he fought those opponents. Do you train, or are you like a coach? Used to train a lot, don't train as frequently now because of medical stuff. In terms of coaching, I have in the past. Now I more so just do game plans for people. Do you think Jones will ever come back? He said he unretired. I don't think so, honestly, but we will see. So this is another matchup that may be more interesting than people think. It may not. We'll see. Adaba, I don't even know how to say his name. Adaba, Gadier, whatever. Gets compared to Ngannou a lot because of the Cameroon, of course, and his fighting style and his one-punch knockout power. And it's an apt comparison, but not just because of that. He has the same thing where his striking does not flow. A lot of his things are thrown just with full power, but the technique and like the fluidity is not there yet and may never be there just because of the style. So eventually, if he fights a higher level striker and he does not have an Ngannou level chin, he will get knocked out badly because his defense and his recovery from throwing strikes is not there. So I do think Gadier is being a little bit overrated in general. On the other side, Valentin is one of those fighters that if he actually got all of his skills together, so to speak, it feels like he would be a ranked opponent to say the very least, because physically, he's extremely talented. One-punch knockout power, has amazing transitions on the ground when he does it, when it's to his benefit. So if he just engages for no reason on the ground, it will go badly, of course, like 2 fights ago. But if he engages on the ground on his terms, he does very well in snatching up submissions very quickly. But yeah, the problem is that he's just way too wild. On the feet, he focuses way too much on overhands and big elbows and such, and while it can create great highlights, it makes him very open to being hit. So, the real question for Gadier in this matchup, if he doesn't get caught by a wild overhand, which is possible, I would not be shocked, despite like the massive favoring of Gadier here, if Valentin just threw a random wild overhand and elbow and knocked him out in 20 seconds. That being said, on the feet, it probably favors Gadier. Despite my criticisms about his fluidity, he is the more technical striker overall. The real question is his takedown defense. He stuffed a lot of takedowns on Contender Series, but the guy was there to be a sacrificial lamb. Like, the guy was not supposed to take him down. He was just supposed to get knocked out. He defended, I believe, 9 out of 10 takedowns, but on the time he did get taken down, he had nothing. He could not get back to the feet. He did not even threaten getting back to the feet. He just stayed there the rest of the round. If you get taken down by Valentin and you're staying there the rest of the round, he's going to smash your face in and then sub you. So, if Valentin comes in with a game plan of, okay, maybe this guy is better than me on the feet, I'm just going to spam wrestle, this could get interesting very quickly. I still am ultimately going to favor Gadier by first round TKO, but I don't know why he's such a massive favorite, because there are ways for Valentin to win this, unless Gadier has improved massively, which is possible, but we've had no indication of so far. So, this is going to be a fight to see what the trajectory of these two are, because if Valentin can get a comeback win here, he could get back in the fans' good graces very quickly, because he is wildly entertaining, and I would like to see him fight more. Gadier, if he proves that his takedown defense is impeccable against Valentin, okay, then he definitely needs to start fighting up after this. Thoughts on Andreas Gustafsson, and do you think he can be ranked? I don't like his style in the sense that it's way too reliant on his opponent not just relaxing and throwing something down the pipe and knocking him out cold. I think he will have success in the unranked sphere for a while, because of the fact that a lot of those guys are not the most calm when you just start walking them down. But I think as soon as he fights a power puncher who's like, okay, yeah, I can just use your massive openings to flatline you, he's going to get knocked out badly. The White House card attracting the worst personalities in the sport, like Masta Flame. I mean, I don't know what the deal is with the White House card anyway. We'll see what happens. They said he wants to fight for the White... Okay, yeah. Gadier so young and has Sambo. We'll see what happens. So we have any part of you understand the Marvin Vtori betting line. Did Allen drop in odds? Oh, we'll get to that in a second. Adaba's middleweight, right? I don't see him becoming champ. Yeah, right now I don't see him becoming champ either. But he could go further. Do you think Andreas Gustafsson can beat Renat? In my opinion, it's a very 50-50 fight. I might have to slightly lean Renat because I just don't think that Gustafsson's going to be able to hold Renat against the fence or like threaten takedowns against him. Thoughts on Yusu Young? If he was younger, he would have a good chance of being ranked and maybe making a run. I just don't know since he's not that young. Brendan Allen's only minus 205 now. Okay, we'll get to that. That is a bit weird. How did Valentin lose to Finney? Honestly, if we score it properly, Valentin should not have lost to Finney. Prau versus Veranteneov. I don't fully understand why Prau is at welterweight. He was a reasonable size for featherweight, and he doesn't have the longest reach, but it is what it is. We're here now. Prau is a reasonably technical boxer. He has the ability to mix in takedowns. He was able to take down Jake Matthews, which is somewhat impressive. So Prau, especially for his age, is reasonable. He's super young. I think he's like 22-ish, maybe 23. So Prau could develop into something more legitimate. On the other side, Veranteneov is 35, I believe. He's proven that he can't really handle very mediocre level competition. He's an okay like kickboxer. His takedown defense kind of sucks. Prau is going to have a lot of paths to victory here. I honestly think he's just a little bit better everywhere. Even if Veranteneov does show that he's better than Prau on the feet, which I don't expect, but it is possible, Prau can just start wrestling, because Veranteneov apparently just has nothing on the ground. So I am going to favor Prau decision here. Not the most in-depth analysis. I don't know why this is above like any other fight on this card, in all honesty, but it is what it is. What do you think is the most technical striking match you have seen in UFC history? Good question. I'll have to think about that more. That's not something I could probably answer off the cuff. The move towards young talents and prospects as MMA becomes an established major sport is interesting. Agreed. Jan and O'Malley, Jan and Sandhagen, Peter Jan and Jose Aldo. They're all reasonable picks, yeah. Honestly, I think there is an argument for Moreno versus Figueiredo. But okay, on to Vtori versus Allen. Vtori, his style does not need much of a breakdown. He just moves forward, is immortal for some reason, and tries to hit you. Sometimes he decides he wants to wrestle, sometimes he just doesn't. I've tried to see if there's like a pattern of when he wrestles and when he doesn't. I have not found a single pattern whatsoever. So, predicting whether Vtori is going to be a pure boxer or a pure wrestler or somewhere in between, at least to me, is literally nonsensical. Brendan Allen is very, very talented. Is just an idiot. Allen has very fast, very technically sound takedowns. On the ground, he is also pretty dangerous. It's very hard to escape his control. He has the ability to transition to the back well. If he's on the back or even in between, he has the ability to lock up the rear naked choke very easily. On the feet, he is fast and powerful. He will be a bit spastic, I guess you would say, meaning that I don't think he always like considers, or not always, I don't think he ever really considers setups. I think he just throws stuff and just like kind of is like, okay, I'm throwing this now, I'm going to throw a head kick now, I'm going to throw a calf kick now, and there's no real reason, he just does it. That being said, it is powerful, it is fast, and it can definitely hurt people. Alan's biggest problem is that his stupidity gets him into a lot of problems. So again, had he just decided to not pull a random guillotine in his last fight, he would have beaten Hernandez most likely, because he did hurt him in the beginning of round 3. Similarly, if he had stopped shooting takedowns against Imavov, it's no guarantee he would have won, but he would have definitely had a better chance. So the only problem with, like, the teeniest problem with picking Alan this fight is if you're worried somehow he's going to throw it with his terrible fight IQ. Because, technically speaking, otherwise, he is significantly better everywhere. I mean, like, he hits harder than Vtori, he's faster than Vtori, his striking is a bit more technical than Vtori, his wrestling is better, his shots are better, his grappling is better. His cardio is the only area maybe he's a little worse than Vtori. Vtori can go 5 rounds at a reasonable pace. Alan does definitely slow down, so maybe you give that a slight lean to Vtori, but this is 3 rounds anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So I heavily favor Alan here, and I think Alan's decision is very likely because Vtori is just immortal. I don't know why the line has dropped to minus 205. So yeah, I have a hard time seeing Alan losing. If Alan loses to Vtori, I mean, his fight IQ would genuinely need to be studied at that point, because this should be a hard matchup to lose. Do you think it will be more difficult for Alan to... I'm confused what you're asking there. Alan could have won against Fluffy, but he is dumb. Yeah, exactly. Petition to send Alan to a lab if he loses this one? Yeah, 100%. Do you think Anthony Hernandez can beat DDP, Izzy, and Whitaker? The biggest problem is we saw a lot of issues in Fluffy's game last fight, where he's not durable at all, which is something to an extent we already knew, but I don't think we knew how bad it was when he can get hurt by a lot, to say the least. So that lack of durability, combined with the fact that he is hittable and relies on his pace, like kind of a much more upgraded version of Andreas Gustafsson, let's say, I do think that he's going to have problems against the more technical strikers. Have you studied game theory? I mean, a long time ago, but yeah. I wasn't a fan back then, but the idea that Vtori got a title shot is always insane to me. Yeah, middleweight was a very weak division, to say the least. Okay. Phillips versus Oliveira. So it is interesting that one of you mentioned that there's a Reddit or something saying that Oliveira is a trap here. Because I somewhat agree, but we'll get to that. So, Phillips is... how would I describe him? He's a very explosive fighter. He has really good footwork on the outside. He will dart in and out. He'll mix things up depending on his opponent. If he doesn't need to shoot takedowns, he won't shoot takedowns. If he feels like it's going to be the best path to victory, he will. He has a solid amount of power, but really only in like round 1. After it, he does definitely fade. His biggest problem is cardio, because all of his movements are so big. He will throw spinning stuff to try to get big reactions. The problem is that he's not landing it really at all, I guess. I mean, like, it looks cool, but his more fundamental stuff is just his boxing. His kicks are not bad, but it's like the simple stuff that lands. It's like the teeps, like the calf kicks and so on. His spinning stuff isn't really a threat because he just has no real accuracy with it. So, as the fight goes on, this is going to get harder and harder for Phillips, because Oliveira is basically the opposite, right? Oliveira is less fundamentally sound as a fighter. He gets hit a lot in the early rounds typically. Like Oliveira against Said Nurmagomedov, he dropped round 1, and then he dropped like the first half of round 2 as well. Oliveira against Sopai, he's getting beat up in round 1. I forget if he technically took round 2 or not, but Sopai was definitely having success in it, and then he ends up getting the finish and such. So Oliveira relies very heavily on his pace. He is a good fighter, but he's not like technically sound against these high-level fighters. His best performance was probably the Ricky Simone one, because he kind of just outclassed Simone from beginning to end. But I also don't think that Simone is really like a fighter you're going to have that many problems with as long as you can stuff his takedowns. So that doesn't say much against Phillips, in my opinion, because he can keep the fight standing the entire time. Now, Phillips, while it may seem obvious, like, okay, Phillips is going to gas out, Oliveira is going to push a very heavy pace, so Oliveira wins rounds 2 and 3 or gets a late finish. And that is definitely possible. But if Phillips did not realize after last fight that all he needs to do is just heavily focus on his cardio, I mean, then I don't know what to say. And let's say that Phillips did heavily focus on his cardio. Let's say that his cardio problem is gone. Then who are we picking? Probably Phillips here, realistically, because technically speaking, he is the more fundamentally sound fighter. So, because I haven't seen the cardio improvements from Phillips yet, I do have to pick Oliveira decision. But it would not shock me at all if Phillips was able to take rounds 1 and 2 and just came in with significantly better cardio because it was all he focused on since last fight. So, I don't agree with the overwhelming confidence that some people have in Oliveira here. Will be more difficult for Vtori, Allen, or Dolidze. I would say Allen is more difficult because of he actually has like speed. Is Morab bantamweight GOAT? Yeah, at this point I would say so. Does anyone have questions about my Phillips versus Oliveira take? Because this is probably my most controversial one so far, I guess. Even though I am picking the favorite ultimately. Phillips is just a slightly worse version of Said Nurmagomedov. See, I don't agree with that. Because Said is not going to knock you out with his hands. He's going to be a problem kick-wise, but his goal is basically to either just damage you enough with the kicks, or... I mean, like, okay, he could land a spinning back fist or something like that, but he's probably not going to knock you out with his hands for the most part. And then he wants to bait you into the power guillotine. Phillips, on the other hand, is going to dance in and out with powerful striking. Like, he is capable of dropping people with his hands much more so than someone like Said Nurmagomedov is, of course, absent of a spinning back fist or something. So, I don't really get the Kyler Phillips versus Said Nurmagomedov comparisons here. I think they are very different fighters. I think the only thing they really have in common is that, like, okay, they both throw spinning stuff sometimes, and that they both kind of gas out. Morab versus Umar 2 prediction. I think that people don't realize how compromised Morab was going into that fight. He had like 3 infections or something ridiculous, and I think he gassed out and couldn't push a pace because of it. I think in a second fight, Morab would probably just do what he was doing, except at a even higher pace, and probably get a 4th round TKO. Gonna mute myself for a second to drink water. You have Vinicius by decision? Yeah, it's a completely fair prediction. That is my prediction ultimately as well. Morab getting a 4th round TKO on Umar if they fight again is what you just said? Yes. Do you think do you think Morab got a lot better? I think that he definitely improved his power and, of course, his submission. Like, what would be the word for it? Maybe just his squeeze, I guess, because he had the same submission setups in the past. He just didn't have the same squeeze, really. Do you think the Prime Kane was overrated? Yes, I do. I think the whole C-level Kane thing is stupid. Like, if you actually look at the stats of the fight with Verdum compared to all of other Kane's fights, it matches up very well. Kane was never going to be able to take that much damage and then just keep up a high volume. It didn't make sense. In Australia, where I am, Kyler Phillips to win round 1 is like plus 800 or something. Should I bet that? You mean to win in round 1? I doubt just winning round 1 would be plus 800. I mean, I don't expect Phillips to get a first round knockout, so I wouldn't personally take that. Early prediction for Islam versus JDM. I'm just slightly leaning JDM. It's a tough matchup to predict, and actually it's not as much because of the grappling. Well, it is indirectly. What I'd be worried about for JDM is that he's much more willing to drop his hands against grapplers now, which I think is going to open up stuff like the head kick for Islam. So I don't think that JDM will get subbed, or at least like get subbed because he got taken down. I think the threat is more actually getting hurt on the feet. Do you think Game 3 is useful for MMA? I mean, any knowledge of like stuff, I mean, I guess that would technically be economics, right? But any knowledge of like strategy in general is, in my opinion, useful in MMA. How would Prime Dillashaw do against Morab? I think Morab would probably win a 48-47. I can see it being somewhat close if we're talking about juicing Dillashaw. It could be a 49-46 Morab. I would take Morab, but like it could be somewhat close. To win the first round is plus 800. Never mind. Okay, yeah. If it was plus 800 just to win round 1, that would be wild. How does Leon Murphy do against top 5 featherweights? He doesn't. It's crazy how much Morab improved against O'Malley after Sean dedicated so much training. See that he's like 36, yeah. Thoughts on people comparing Fluffy and Morab? I understand the comparison, but I would say they're very different styles. I would say that Fluffy is pressure, while Morab is pace. Now, they may seem like different things, but Morab is going to break you by doing stuff. Fluffy is going to break you by making you like panic and back up and stuff like that. All right, we'll finish the main card and we'll go back to some more questions. So, Michael Johnson versus Daniel Sahuber. I don't know why this is on the main card when Vtori Allen isn't. Kind of ridiculous to me, but whatever. Everyone knows Michael Johnson at this point. Power puncher, wildly inconsistent, can beat the top level fighters, can't beat the most random other mid-level fighters. Very, very strange career. Dropped Tony Ferguson, beat him, knocked Dustin Poirier out cold, and then lost to like Thiago Moises, I think. But anyways, so Huber on the other hand has a very long reach, isn't always the most effective about using it. My major criticism of Zelv Huber is that he'll fight in the pocket way more than he needs to, even when he has a massive reach advantage. If he fixes that, he could be a very effective fighter, because like generally at range, he is very tough to deal with. Like most of the things he does very right, like using his kicks at range, using his jab, but then he'll just let himself go into the pocket, and that's how he eventually got hurt by Ribovics and lost that split decision. That being said, he should win this. The problem fighting on the inside gives Johnson a small chance to get a knockout here. I do not expect it because Zellhuber is very durable. Zellhuber probably learned from his mistake and keeps his distance correctly here. Zellhuber also, even though he doesn't really get finishes typically, has the power to put out Johnson and probably will put out Johnson. I am not as wildly confident as some people are just because of Zellhuber's inside fighting issue, but I would expect him to win. I'm probably going to take him by second round TKO if I have to pick a round. On the topic of Morab, who in the entirety of the bantamweight history do you think would give him the most difficult fight? Dominic Cruz. Mario Bautista versus Morab. Morab definitely wins. Did Johnson beat Prime Tony? He beat kind of pre-Prime Tony, to be fair. Breakdown, Khamzat versus DDP. I personally have DDP by 4th round TKO. I mean, I have pretty much the same pick as you. For a full breakdown, I'll do it later, not in the middle of breaking down picks, because I might ramble for a while on that, to be honest. This is another fight that I don't know why it's on the main card when some other fights are on the prelims. Like, not that it's a bad fight, but Ige is always barely in the rankings, and Pipple, I mean, probably will never be in the rankings. Ige, we all know, power puncher. He can get a first round knockout. If he doesn't get a first round knockout, probably goes to decision. He did get the third round TKO against Woodson officially. I think everyone who watched that saw it was a ridiculously early stoppage. I don't know what the hell happened there. Ige's biggest problem is that he just, besides the fact that he'll make like really weird decisions sometimes, kind of like Allen, but to a much smaller degree, is that he's kind of like explosion or bust. Like in terms of just fundamental like boxing or something, he's not really there. Not on the same level as like, oh, Josh Emmett, I'm just going to spam overhands and that's all I have. Ige has a bit more boxing than that, but he kind of just has to catch you on the inside. If you stay on the outside properly, or on the inside, you're good about like clinching up or shooting the takedown and just not letting him have the chance to like bomb hooks there, you're probably going to be okay. Ige is stupidly durable, I believe has never been finished. I don't expect him to ever be finished until age catches up to him. Pipple, on the other hand, is not what he used to be, so I can't break him down like I would have like 5 or 7 years ago. But he's essentially become a low-volume power puncher who doesn't have the greatest takedowns, but he will shoot sometimes, and on the ground does have good summations, but will never really get the opportunity to use them. As you can probably tell from my analysis, I'm going to pick Ige. I think he's going to get a knockout here, actually, because Pipple just, at this age, doesn't seem UFC level. In all honesty, I don't know if he ever would have been UFC level, but he would have had a much better chance in the past. Now, it's just like, it feels kind of like Romero, where it just hit a point where it's like, you're just not in there fully. Pipple's just a little too old, a little too slow. Maybe he just knows he doesn't have the cardio to really push a pace or anything anymore, but he's just looking for a big shot that he's not going to find. Who do you think wins, Morab or Poirier? I mean, we haven't really seen much from Alexandre if you're referring to him, so I don't know. I'd lean Morab just because we don't really... I wasn't that impressed with Alexandre in his last fight to be like, oh, maybe he beats Morab. Pipple's one of my favorites. He's going to win. I mean, it would be interesting and maybe good for the division if he won. I mean, I can't even say that because he's on the older side, so I don't know how much time he has left. But unless Pipple can really turn back the clock here, I don't know how he can win this. Because the way he's been fighting, it just does not look like he's fighting. Like, he's just waiting for a big shot to open up, which is not going to happen against the UFC guys. And even if he managed to find it against Ige, he's not going to finish Ige. So if he's relying on that, it's just even worse. Holland versus Rodriguez. You know, breaking down the card now, the more and more I'm starting to think that this is a terrible card, because I wasn't fully on board with the like, oh, this is a terrible card initially, but now it's like, oh, 3 of these main card matchups are not main card matchups. So, yeah, I guess. Holland, everyone knows, rangy striker, has a good submission game, loves to fight off his back, so if he's getting taken down, those are the fights you usually don't want to be able to pick him in because he will just lay there and is unpredictable about actually trying to get up. He has looked better in his last 2 fights, to be fair, though. I picked Luque against him because I thought Luque was just going to be able to mix things up too well. Holland showed that he is actually trying and he is mixing stuff up now, and he is not going to get taken down that easy at welterweight. So fair play to him. He seems like he is picking things up a bit. Daniel Rodriguez, on the other hand, he's a solid boxer. I mean, he'll hit reasonable counters, and in his prime, I mean, I would say that his fundamentals were pretty good. But especially over the last few fights, it's like, you know, you're watching an old fighter fight because he just looks slow. His combinations don't look great. It's just, he doesn't look like there's much there. And besides his boxing, he doesn't have much. And is he going to knock out Holland? Like, very unlikely, in my opinion. So I have a hard time seeing Holland losing this. I'm actually very surprised Holland wasn't like minus 800, minus 900 here. Because what is the path to victory for Rodriguez? Outbox Holland for 3 rounds? don't get taken down once because you might get choked out then. Don't get tagged by Holland once at range. Like, I think Holland should finish his fight very easily. It's possible Rodriguez can survive to a decision. Again, he hasn't been finished that often, but when you're getting finished by Ian Gary, and obviously Gary is an underrated fighter, but you don't want to be getting finished by him, especially in round 1. So I think Holland makes this look easy, and I'm going to say gets a round 1 knockout. Could easily be a round 1 submission. We'll see what happens. In recent history, these terrible cards have been very fun with many finishes. So I could see this being a quote-unquote fun card. It's just not really pay-per-view worthy, if that makes any sense. Like, it's more so about, like, how do I put it? It's a fight night. Like, this is just a glorified fight night. Even if we look at the main event in itself, it's a made-up belt. This really just feels like a fight night that they're charging people $80 for. I gotta think all the main card fights are pure violence in New Orleans. Everyone's most likely will stand and bang. Lots of finishing upside potential. Yeah, I agree. I think it will be fun. I just don't like the fights they have on it, even if it will be fun. Dumb question, but what about Morab versus Ilia? The problem is you don't want to be trying to go 25 minutes with Ilia, because he just has to catch you once. So I'd favor Ilia there. John Silva versus Morab if he moves up. Similar problem to Ilia. You don't really want to be going 25 minutes with John Silva, and I don't think Morab's going to finish John Silva. So it's too much of a risk to give him that many reads. For the record, I'm not paying for it. I probably shouldn't read that out loud, but yes. You're acting like anyone pays for a pay-per-view. Okay, we're speaking theoretically here, guys. In terms of the supposed business strategy of the UFC, not what we may know is actually going to happen. Prediction for Bud versus Canelo. I'm leaning towards Crawford. I think he's just a better boxer. Granted, again, boxing is not my sport, so don't take my opinion to mean much here, if anything. I think that people are putting way too much stock in Canelo's size. I don't think Canelo has ever been spectacular, in all honesty. Canelo getting caught juicing, of course, has not made my opinion of him any better. So I think that Crawford, just being the more technical fighter, has ways to win. See, like, Costa versus Kopylov, right? This is a fight. That'll definitely be fun. But why is it the co-main event? Like, this should be a main card opener. Maybe, like, the prelim featured fight or something like that. Anyways, so, this is a fight where I have a very controversial take on. I do not think that Kopylov is good. Kopylov has solid kicks and has solid power in round 1. As round 1 goes along, and we get into round 2, Kopylov stops moving his feet, slows down dramatically, seemingly gets tired very quickly, and does not deal with pressure well at all. He also loves to drop his hands after he throws anything, from kicks to punches, I mean literally anything. So like, his fundamental defense is not spectacular. He relies heavily on these big movements that slow him down, and he does slow down, and he just kind of relies on his opponent not pressuring him. When Chris Curtis pressured him, and I don't have the highest opinion of Chris Curtis, we saw Kopylov have a lot of issues. So, I don't think Kopylov is ranked quality in all honesty. And even though Costa, again, has had his inconsistencies, well, Costa's the perfect fighter to punish this, especially if he's going back to his high-pressure style. Because all Costa has to do here is just walk down Kopylov and not get too hurt early. Because if he just keeps walking down Kopylov, blasting to the body, doing things that old Costa did, then Kopylov is going to get tired, it's going to open up more body shots for Costa, and he's going to finish Kopylov in round 2, maybe round 3. Kopylov could potentially outpoint him for 3 rounds. If Costa fights tentative and doesn't change his style from like his last 2 or 3 fights, whatever it's been, then yeah, Kopylov will outpoint him to decision. But I think that there's a lot more upside on Costa here, and I don't get the hype behind Kopylov because I don't think he really has I shouldn't say the attributes, he has the attributes. I don't think he has the skills to be at the top levels of this division. Are you a college student? No, I'm not. Kopylov cheated a lot against Curtis. I honestly don't even remember, but fair, I'll take your word for it. Because secret juice, dude. Fair enough. Worried Costa just stands at kickboxing range as his legs and body are slowly destroyed, but he wins if he fights smart. It's possible. Yeah, if Costa doesn't wake up and just sits back and gets tagged, yeah, I mean, he's gonna lose. But if he walks forwards, that's all he has to do. He just has to walk forwards this fight, because Kopylov isn't like an Adesanya where he can find this counterpunch to hurt you and put you out. Kopylov is just gonna have to keep spamming his kicks and hope that it eventually takes a toll. So as long as Costa has his guard high, is preventing against the head kick, lifts his knee for the body kick instead, something like that, he should be able to break Kopylov. Do you think Bud can hurt Canelo? It's possible. That is a little less likely. I think it's more likely to be a more technical decision style fight. He would spit out his mouth guard when he's tired. Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, that is a trick a lot of fighters do, unfortunately. Yeah, I don't have a high opinion of Kopylov. A 36-year-old was beating him up with body kicks, and Kopylov only won because Almeida doesn't know how to stuff a takedown or get back to his feet or do pretty much anything on the ground. Then Kopylov against Curtis, again, was not doing well. It was supposed to be like a give-me matchup for Kopylov. Did not look great. He did ultimately win, of course, but was not the fight that you would want to see from him going into this. If Costa versus Romero shows up, it might be over for the Russian. Yeah, that's basically what I expect here, in all honesty. Costa seemed baked out of his mind at the presser. In his prime, he'd make easy work of Roman, but I don't trust him to take a fight seriously at this point. It's possible. If you're going on the premise like, oh, we're not going to see any version of like a reasonable Costa here, I get what you mean. I'm not going to fault anyone for picking Kopylov. I just have to operate on what I've seen from both fighters, and I think if Costa's fighting at even a fraction of his prime self, but actually wants to fight, then I have to go Costa. The Khamzat motivation might bring Prime Paulo out. Yeah, very possible. Kopylov will also be smaller, so I can see Costa using grappling. It's possible. I don't think Costa's really going to offensive wrestle much, especially because Kopylov does have solid takedown defense, but I do see him, again, just being able to basically bully Kopylov here. Who is your boxing goat? Probably Robinson. Khamzat would slaughter this dude now, though. It's possible. It's a weird matchup, though, because Costa has very underrated takedown defense. My boxing goat is Ilia to Poirier, fair enough. Max or Poirier, we're getting to that. Don't worry. So I just joined thoughts on Holland under 1.5. It would be a fair play. I think he should, as long as he's taking it seriously. Yeah, you're correct, Botan. Prime Paulo versus Khamzat, who wins? It's hard to say, because we really have not seen Chimaev fight someone who has solid BJJ and takedown defense. Like, I feel like people haven't realized that. Like, besides, say, Usman, right? But he doesn't even have the BJJ. He just has the takedown defense. And even that, we saw give Chimaev a fair amount of problems. And that was Usman off the couch on a week's notice or less. His takedown D isn't better than Usman, though, and Khamzat 10-8'd him. But again, that was Usman off the couch on 1 week's notice, up a weight class. Burns doesn't really focus on takedown defense much, though, because he has such good jiu-jitsu. And to be fair, it worked out for him in that fight. But like, I think that Khamzat was kind of size bullying Burns in that fight to an extent. That wouldn't work against Costa. Granted, I'd still probably lean Chimaev in that fight as of right now, but I would not be surprised if Costa just survived 3 rounds and then beat up Chimaev and finished him. I'm gonna mute for a second, drink some water before we get to the main event. All right. Brady versus 170 Khamzat. Okay, I think that the problem for Brady in that fight is that Khamzat has a chance of TKOing him on the feet because Brady can be a little bit slow. If Brady got out of round 1, then he definitely wins. It kind of depends on Chimaev's game plan. Because if Chimaev's like, oh, I'm going to grapple and stuff Brady, yeah, that's not happening. If Chimaev's like, oh, I'm just going to forget about grappling and knock him out, yeah, that probably happens. Usman was still very fit and healthy. The short notice goes both ways. No, it doesn't. Because again, Usman took it on 1 week's notice, and his game plan has to completely depend on the opponent. Chimaev was preparing, had a full camp for that fight. I feel like people don't realize there's a massive difference. Your peak when you do a full camp is dramatically different than oh, I'm in decent shape and I'm still training actively and such. So imagine Usman again at 30% more than he was that night. He finishes Chimaev then. Pound for pound, who wins, Aldo or Khamzat? Definitely Aldo. I think Brady loses to Giri in most of the top 5. It's possible. Brady's an interesting case. We'll have to see how he does from here. I bet $300 on Khamzat, minus 300 over Costa, and I was so happy that fight got cancelled. It's a tougher matchup for Khamzat than people think IMO would have looked like a bad bet, win or lose. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there was definitely a solid chance it wins, but it would have been well, he technically won, but I think GSP today could beat Buckley. Yeah, of course. I mean, especially with what we saw Buckley last fight, it's just, unless GSP just stopped training completely, he's going to be able to take him down even now. Gary is really fast. That's why he's a problem. You have to catch him. Yeah, I think that Gary definitely has a path to victory against Brady, as we were saying. I think that Gary does not have a path to victory against JDM. Why do you think boxing is succeeding in MMA? Because it's more... how do I phrase this? I don't think boxing is succeeding in MMA. I will actually say that. I think that using your hands more efficiently is succeeding in MMA, which might seem like the same thing, but MMA boxing is nothing like regular boxing. People say Ilia Poirier is such a good boxer, blah, blah, blah. His style is not a boxing style. It is an MMA boxing style, and they are very different. So, you would never see a boxer have success fighting like that because glove difference and accuracy difference and so on. But in MMA, it works very well. So I don't really agree with the people who are saying oh, boxing is taking over. I think it's okay, we're just evolving the amount of skill you need to have with your hands. Leon or Morales? I feel so bad for Leon, everyone hates him. I have to go Morales there. I think he can just mix it up too well if he needs to. And on the feet, I don't even see Leon really having much an advantage, if any. How do you think JDM versus Kevin Holland 2 goes? Because the first fight was a split decision. I think it goes somewhat the same. I think JDM wins the decision, and everyone's that was kind of a boring fight, but JDM technically was just cleaner. Ilia Poirier's style is modified, but it's influenced a lot by Canelo. If he said that, fair enough. I'm not going to say I really see it, but if that's what he's saying, okay. Thoughts on Japanese kickboxing? I can't say I know that much about it. Alright, let's get through the main event so I can just keep answering questions and not have to worry about the fact that people are still here for the breakdown. Oops, I always do that. So I think a lot of you... What is with this? Okay, there we go. I think a lot of you already know my view on the main event from my reel about it, but I'm going to point something out, and I'm going to go into a bit more detail than I did in my reel. So, Poirier really struggles with pressure, and people seem to not understand this, but let's look at his history and look at what his recent fights are. So, Islam Makhachev, okay, not a pressure fighter, fair enough. Benoit Saint-Denis, people just look at the ending and are oh, Dustin's such a great counter striker. But are we really going to ignore the fact against Benoit Saint-Denis, as much as I like him, does not really have much defense on the feet, to say the absolute least, and was absolutely tearing Dustin up in round 1. Like, looked like he was going to knock out Dustin at one point. And again, this is as Benoit Saint-Denis is a better grappler than striker. And, like, that was not an encouraging look for Dustin, to say the least. It looked like a complete regression of his striking and the fact that he can't handle pressure. Then if we go back a little further, okay, Gaethje fight wasn't really pressure, fair enough. Chandler. He's getting beaten up against the fence by Chandler. Chandler's just swinging overhands. That's the only reason why Poirier survived, is because Chandler refused to throw a straight punch. Like, if Chandler just focused on accuracy for once and threw a straight punch, Poirier was done there, and he said so himself. So Chandler pushing him up against the fence and unloading was how he just almost won the fight, and only lost because he just swings like an idiot. Oliveira, again, everyone focuses on the grappling part, but the reality is Oliveira used a lot of body strikes and mixed everything up really well to basically break Poirier. So if we're looking at this, 22 body strikes by Oliveira, 17 in round 1, went lower as the fight went along, of course. But he basically used pressure to break Poirier and then eventually finish him. He never took a back step. Oliveira's forward pressure in that fight was super underrated and was how he won. Then if we go even further back, okay, McGregor fights, fair enough, he did fine. But Hooker, right? Hooker has him against the fence, is unloading on him. Poirier only survives because of the round ends, and then is only able to win after that because of the fact that Hooker gasses out. So and then before that again, not striking pressure. Khabib has a lot of grappling pressure. Dustin gasses out, cannot deal with it, and so on. So Poirier, I think throughout his career had this issue, but I think as he ages, it is starting to aggravate, where he just cannot deal with pressure whatsoever. Now, yes, in the Max fight, the second Max fight, he was kind of able to deal with it, but he was really hurt at the end of round 3. I think at the end of round 4, he was also in a submission attempt or something at the end of it. So it kind of was like, okay, if Max is a little bigger here, hits a little harder, Poirier is probably out, because Max is not going to gas out. Max is not going to make a massive mistake like Chandler will, or Benoit Saint-Denis will. So how does Poirier win this fight? Because Holloway, unless for some reason he's completely abandoning pressure, which people have said, like, oh, recently he hasn't been fighting with pressure, so I don't see him fighting with that against Poirier. I understand the take, but I don't agree with it. His recent opponents are Poirier, Gaethje, and so on. So of course he was going to adjust his style to be a bit less volume dependent, because you can't just throw volume against those guys. Against Poirier, he may hit hard and such, but Holloway can take some of his shots and can pressure him backwards and then unload there. So I really don't see why Holloway wouldn't just be like, okay, I'm going to engage with kicks and then push you backwards, blitz you like maybe Islam did, maybe shoot a takedown even to get you to back up to the fence, and then just start unloading on you against the fence because you've proven you can't deal with it. And even if you survive, I'll have the ability to do it next round, where you seem like you might gas out when you get pressured like this. So I am going with Holloway. I'm going Holloway with TKO, and I think it's going to happen earlier than people expect. I think it's going to be round 3-ish. Is having a good chin genetics or neck training because of weight cut, or because of weight cut? It's a combination of a lot of factors. There's a lot of genetics in the mix, though. We need Ian versus Morales to happen for my sanity. Fair enough. So regarding chin, right? The whole neck muscle thing is pushed very often, but from the studies I've seen of it, there's like very minimal actual like benefit of it. So it's mainly genetics, and from what I've seen, cardio definitely seems to help as well. Not because you'll necessarily like just have an amazing chin, but you'll be able to recover so much faster if your cardio is good that it'll seem like you have a great chin, even though you might have actually gotten stunned. People just won't realize. Chandler versus McKinney would be a mythical fight at round 1, valid. A well-prepped Max destroys Dustin Chandler. Yeah, I agree. Poirier power is mid. I think Poirier has solid power, it's just he's not always going to be able to land it efficiently. Man, I watched the Poirier-McGregor fights back last weekend. McGregor was not impressive in hindsight. Poirier just needed to survive for 5 minutes, and Conor wasn't looking good either early. Yeah, Conor was not what he used to be, in my opinion. Max is insane now because he beat Justin. Everyone thought he would have lost. I mean, I was very confident in Holloway against Justin. I also did pick Holloway against Poirier, of course, which definitely aged less well, to say the least. But Holloway definitely has the ability to beat most people because he has the cardio while actually having underrated defense. Like, people don't realize that his defense is... Let me show you guys. So, Holloway's defense is at 59%, which is solid in itself. But then what people don't realize on top of that is a lot of his defensive slacking, let's say, is leg kicks. It's not actually getting hit in the head. So, if you look through a lot of these fights, it's like, okay, Holloway's actual head defense is like probably 63, 64%, and now we're taking it to like, okay, Strickland level defense. So I don't think he's going to get hit as easily as people expect. So neck doesn't matter for chin. It's not that it doesn't matter at all. There is a small correlation in the studies I've seen. It's just like, you're not going to... If you have a bad chin and you work on your neck, you're not just going to magically get a good chin. I'm not going to say, oh, don't work on your neck. Like, that's fine. But, or even good, right? You obviously want to improve everything. But don't expect to have a dramatically better chin by working on your neck. Neck does help a tiny bit with your chin. Yeah, exactly. There's a small impact. Just don't expect it to do everything. Max's bad defensive stats are based more on when he used to take one to give one too. Yeah, fair, but even then, it was better than people think. How does Holloway versus Arman and Charles go? I think Holloway has a solid chance in both matchups, in all honesty. They need to put Golovkin in the lab and study his chin. Valid. Holloway takedown defense is pretty good. Yeah, it is. I think rolling with shots is underrated as well. Yeah, of course. Whatever you can do to take less impact is obviously great. Well, okay, Holloway having a win against Charles doesn't mean much because, I mean, like, nothing happened. Charles just randomly tore his esophagus, I think, and then the fight got stopped. Is bone density the major factor for a good chin? I don't think so. I don't think we've isolated like the actual reasoning. Some people have a good or bad chin. I think right now it's just like we say genetics and chalk it up to that. Because again, as someone else was saying previously, if you look at Adesanya, he's not like a very dense guy, but he has a spectacular chin. Holloway beats Charles but loses to Arman. I could see Holloway beating Arman, because Holloway has very underrated takedown defense and scrambling. Oh, I forgot I can run polls. Let's run them. Well, okay, I'm late to have a poll that was not influenced by my opinion, but let's run a poll anyway. All right. So far, very confident Holloway, it seems. I don't know if you've been asked this before, but why do you think DDP beats Chimaev? So, okay. Especially since I did the tape study on Chimaev for the YouTube video about it, I'm a bit less certain. because I did definitely come to admire some of the things that Chimaev does on the ground. He has very creative transitions, he does very well with using the body lock to manipulate position, and he's able to like control posture in very weird ways that I haven't seen from any other fighter. That being said, I think he's a little bit too predictable. And I think that when you bring that predictability against someone like DDP, he is going to be able to game plan around it. So DDP knows that he just needs to get into round 3, maybe even just round 2. So I'm assuming he's going to actually be okay initiating wrestling on his terms to be able to make sure that Chimaev can't get to the body lock easily. And if Chimaev can't get to the body lock, then he's not going to be able to control the position and get a finish. It's so hard to control Holloway on the ground. Yeah, exactly. Do you think Paddy is good? I swear this guy just gets wins handed to him against 40-year-olds. Yeah, I don't think that Paddy is that good, to be honest. I think that he was better than people thought he was 2 fights ago, but I don't think that he's as good as people think he is now. Imagine Poirier knocks him out because the Ilia Max KO got... Yeah, so that's the one caveat here, is if, like, Max's chin is cracked somehow, then Poirier could knock him out. We've seen stuff like that happen before. I wouldn't anticipate it happens, but it's always possible. How do you see Ilia versus Paddy exactly going? I see Ilia flatlining him in under a minute. Who wins to Poirier versus Holloway in 155? Same result. So the big problem for Holloway, and this is something that I didn't give Ilia enough credit for initially, and the reason why I picked Holloway is that Holloway has 3 massive advantages going into a fight typically. He has 2 attribute advantages, which is his chin and his cardio, and then he has 1 big skill advantage, which is his footwork. However, what I didn't realize at the time is that Toporia's footwork is just as good, if not better, than Holloway's. So now that Holloway's footwork advantage is negated, okay, well then we're at chin and cardio. We've already proven that Holloway can't necessarily take Toporia's shots. After a few of them, he took a fair amount, to be fair, but at a certain point the chin will go out. And you can't really use the cardio when someone has that punching power, otherwise you're going to get stunned. So now Holloway just has no real advantages. So how does he beat Ilia? Not saying that it's impossible. There's probably a game plan that gets it done, but Ilia just generally is going to have a massive advantage because he negates all of Holloway's advantages. I mean, Dustin did rock Max early when he had his iron chin in their second fight. Dustin could do it to him now. I mean, it's possible, but again, I don't think Max is going to look like how he did in the second fight. And even in the second fight, he almost won as well. But again, that was short notice Max, up a weight class on, I forget how much notice, but it was not a great, it was a good opportunity for him because he had a chance to be double champ, but like it was not ideal conditions for him by any means. Now he's at, like, in my opinion, what's his more natural weight class. He's put on body mass, he's put on power. I think he has a good shot. Maybe his chin is cracked, but I don't think it's going to happen. Who do you think was Ilia's toughest when he fought for a title? I assume you're saying because he said Volk, but I thought Holloway did better. Yes, I think that conceptually Volk was probably Ilia's hardest fight. And I say that because I think Ilia was like, okay, how do I hit this guy because he's so elusive? And I think that's why Ilia thinks of Volk as his hardest fight. I think pragmatically, and from what we saw, of course, Holloway was a harder fight. I watched Brekkis fights, and he has a weird power jab that can put everyone in trouble, like when he broke Strickland's nose. Brekkis, I wouldn't say is a weird power jab. I think that when he knows that the game plan is going to require it, he puts a lot of power into his jab. But I wouldn't say that he always has like a power jab or anything. It's really game plan dependent. Alexandre said to Ilia that Holloway's gassed after round 2 break. I mean, people just say stuff to try to like encourage their fighter. Holloway is definitely not gassed. I mean, Ilia was able to land, but it had nothing to do with him being gassed, in my opinion. Who does JDM beat welterweight now and middleweight in 3 years? I don't know if he's going to go up to middleweight ever, but welterweight, he should be able to beat most of them now pretty easily. Do you think Max struggles with southpaws? I watched the Allen fight and he got caught with some good shots. I think Allen's just underrated. I don't think Max necessarily struggles with southpaws. Why do you think JDM beats Ilia? JDM would... I'm not confident JDM beats Ilia. I think JDM beats Islam. Ilia is a different matchup. I've not really formulated a full opinion of JDM versus Ilia. As long as Holloway took 6 months of no sparring, he should be fine. Yeah, I think so as well. Thinking about losing some money on Vtori by KO plus 1600. No comment there. I would not do that, but up to you. Colonel Dallin would school Diego Lopez. Yeah, I agree. Quickly becoming one of my favorite channels. Love the analysis. Keep it up. Thank you. Is Oliveira lock? If not, who is it? If you came in late for the Oliveira discussion, my take is that from what we've seen, Oliveira should win this. Because obviously Oliveira does better as the fight goes along, Phillips slows down. If you put 2 and 2 together, technically Oliveira should be able to win the second 2 rounds. However, Phillips should know that all he needs to do is improve his cardio, and that should be all he's working on right now, until that is completely fixed. And if we were to assume that Phillips is going to come into this fight with no cardio issues, then who do I pick? Well, it has to be Phillips at that point. So I'm not confident in a prediction for that fight whatsoever. Ultimately, again, I'm going to lean Oliveira because of what we've seen, but it would not shock me if Phillips just fixed that issue and then won the first 2 rounds. John versus Diego, who takes this one? I'm pretty comfortable with John Silva there. I think that John Silva will be champion potentially by the end of this year. Definitely by the end of next year. So Islam should feint, then take down to bring... I assume you mean feint to take down, then go upstairs? Yes. Evil Volk versus Cooking Volk. I don't know what Evil Volk is. Where's that? Which one is that one? Why do you think a lot of people are delusional about the Islam fight versus Ilia? People don't seem to see that Ilia is a nightmare matchup in most ways. They think he's too big. I think it's a lot of bias. I think that Islam definitely has a fan base that does not want to admit that he could lose, to say the least. Diego isn't a very skilled striker. Overall, he's mostly just gotten by on attributes. I kind of agree with that, unfortunately. I like Diego as a fighter, like stylistically, he seems like a cool person also. But John Silva is just going to pick you apart if you are like reliant on winging punches and such. I think Lopez flatlines John in the pocket, but how is he going to get there against John? Is the reality, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, Lopez's best chance is probably blitzing John and hoping that early he can catch John sleeping, because John likes reads. But John's going to know that's a possibility also coming into the fight, and I'm very confident he's going to have prepared for it. The entire MMA fan base puts too much stock in champions and high pound for pound. Styles make fights known as invincible. Exactly. Will Evloev ever get a title shot? At this rate, I don't think so. Aljo versus Brian, how's that going to go? Why did he not move up? I don't know why he didn't move up. Very weird. But I have to lean Aljo. I think he's just done better lately, while Ortega kind of seems to not really have it anymore, to be honest. How would Ilia versus Diego have gone? I assume you mean. Okay, at a certain point, I thought that Diego might be able to give Ilia problems because Ilia is susceptible in the pocket, and Diego, of course, loves being in the pocket. But the reality is that the footwork discrepancy is so ridiculously massive that Ilia probably kills him. Thoughts on the take that if Ilia exchanged in the pocket with Lopez, Ilia would be sleeping. So, yeah, again, initially I kind of thought like that, but thinking about it a bit more, Ilia's setup of where his feet were going to be in the pocket would be so much better. And your footwork is ultimately not like an end-all, but it's very important. I do think Poatan versus Magomedov 2 goes low-key a robbery round by round, but Magomedov clearly won the fight if you don't go round by round. Which is why I think Magomedov won. I mean, we can't just change the rules. We have to go round by rounds. It was one of those weird fights where I agree that Ankalaev had the better performance, but like technically Alex should have probably won. But that being said, either way. As for a second fight goes, I'm very split because I think that it's a good matchup for Alex, but it also felt like Alex really did not show up last time, and when that starts happening as a fighter ages, usually they just don't show up again. So, history would say that Ankalaev wins this fight, while stylistically I feel like Alex should win the fight, so I'm very 50-50 on it. Aaron Murphy versus Aaron Pico prediction. I need to see Pico against a UFC guy to make an effective prediction with him, because I just don't know how he will go, like how he will perform against that level of competition. It was a close fight. The second will be crazy because Ankalaev can't take him down as easily as he thinks. Yeah, agreed. The unfortunate thing is Ankalaev can cage hook like he did the fourth for all 5 rounds and easily win. I'm assuming Alex will game plan around that, but Alex has to show up for sure. Who do you think will beat Ankalaev? I think that Yuri has a very good style to beat Ankalaev. I think then when we saw Thiago Santos drop Ankalaev, it really showed that Ankalaev has a problem with chaos. Like, he can't predict a more chaotic style, generally speaking. So I think that Yuri's probably going to catch him with like some spinning elbow or something wild and probably finish the fight from there. When Alex Prau was champion at middleweight, how would he fare up against guys like Whitaker and other middleweights not Adesanya at the time? I think he does all right against Whitaker. I think he would definitely struggle with the new school middleweights, though. Like someone like Imavov would have been a big problem for him, in my opinion. No problem. How would Magomed versus Tom Aspinall go? So, I've been seeing it going around. People are saying that Ankalaev would be the one to beat Aspinall. I don't know where that originated from, but ultimately, like, I don't know why that became the thing, because Ankalaev doesn't have the power to do so. Like, if you're gonna fight Aspinall, you have to have the power to put him out. Or you really have to have the ability to outlast him. Like, the reason why I was leaning Jones is because he has such a ridiculously good chin, and he has the defensive elusiveness, that the chances of him not surviving round 1 and 2, in my opinion, was slim. But Ankalaev is a semi-hittable guy, is a plotter, so it's not like he's going to have elusive footwork that's going to help him survive. It's like he doesn't really have much going into the matchup, so I think Tom just starches him. Is because of Lucas Tracy? Oh, okay. I genuinely dislike Imavov. I hope Kyle sleeps him because he's toxic and dirty. Fair? I mean, I have no particular like or dislike for Imavov. I think his style is interesting, though. I think the Kyle fight's going to be really fun. What are the chances out of nowhere Aspenol versus Enclave gets announced? Like 0.2%. Alright, I'm probably going to wrap things up for today, guys. Thank you all for coming to the stream, though. I appreciate you guys. Oh, and before I go, I should definitely self-promo. So, the betting for last week went ridiculously well. We hit like a plus... Let me find it. We hit a plus 35,000 parlay. So, if you guys saw my story, you saw the slip for that. It was absolutely ridiculous. Link is in the description for this video if you want to join. If you are betting, I recommend it. We have incredible tools for it. Yeah, I got one for 276. Yeah, that was insane. Are you going to stream more frequently? I hope so. We'll talk about that a bit more, probably in the next stream or in my stories. I do need to give an actual update on something. Or by something, I mean the entire situation right now. But thank you guys for coming. Do sign up. Link in the description if you haven't already. I will see you guys next time, and have a good night.